Income protection is the next piece. Very important piece. Now, this is once you actually get some money, right? That you get some money, meaning you have at least a steady income. It could be a job. Income protection is number one. I want you to ask yourself these kinds of questions, not necessarily this question in particular, but these kinds of questions. How is it that I cannot afford cigarettes? Me, Marquett Burton, I cannot afford cigarettes, but a homeless man can. How is it that I cannot afford cigarettes, but a homeless man can? How is it that a wealthy man cannot afford cigarettes, but a homeless man can? Perhaps our key to understanding why the homeless man is homeless is the fact that he can afford cigarettes, or he can afford to have a dog, or he can afford to pay for things that are unnecessary expenses. Unnecessary expenses. And in some cases, like cigarettes, it's a compounding expense. And what I mean by a compounding expense is that you have to pay for the cigarette itself. Then you might have to pay to dry clean your clothes so they don't smell bad. If it's a suit, for example, I couldn't put the suit in the washing machine. If someone's smoking a cigarette around me or I'm smoking a cigarette, I got to dry clean it. And then you might end up with lung cancer, and now you're dying, and now you have medical bills. It's a compounding expense. It just creates more and more expenses. How is it that a homeless man can afford that, but a wealthy man cannot? Well, a wealthy man can't afford that because a wealthy man is only spending on things that grow him. Fools, homeless people, they spend on things that eat them. I spend on things that feed me. They spend on things that eat them. I spend on things that feed me. They spend on things that eat them. Cigarettes, alcohol, gambling, huh? So what you should be asking yourself is, what are the things I'm spending on that are eating me? They're hurting me, whether it's in the short term or the long term. And it could possibly be a compounding expense. Cigarettes, alcohol, vape pens, Pokemon cards, video games, all of these things you spend money on that you don't need. Coffee. Does coffee hydrate you? No. Does coffee fill your stomach? No. Does it provide you vital nutrients or protein? No. Come on now. That's number one, income protection. Remove all of those expenses, especially if you have low income. Remove those expenses. Number two, morning transaction review. You might say, Marquette, why would you review your transactions in the morning before you've executed transactions? Well, you're reviewing your transactions in the morning for the transactions that you executed the day before, which is to say today is Thursday. Tomorrow morning, Friday morning, I will review the transactions that occurred Thursday. If I find some transactions that should not have been executed, I now can call during business hours to get those transactions canceled. Like, for example, I stay in hotels an awful lot. You'd be shocked at how often hotels overcharge me, thinking I'm not going to review the bill or at least have someone else review the bill. You'd also be shocked to know that hotels, when you say in very expensive hotels, they take a very expensive deposit. I kid you not. One hotel I stayed in, they said they accidentally charged me. They accidentally charged me $13,000. Yes, I kid you not. They accidentally charged me $13,000 for my deposit. I paid for the room and they charged me a deposit of $13,000 on accident. Then it took them 12 days to return the money. I'm even right now, I'm like monitoring a particular transaction that occurred on February 16th. And it's still pending. It was a deposit for a hotel and it should have cleared already, but it hasn't cleared. You need to monitor these things every day because once you get money, the number one thing that's going to nibble away at your money are criminals and thieves. And sometimes they're not individuals, sometimes they're businesses. So you need to be looking at money going in and coming out every single morning. And that's for the previous day, which means you should do this on every day, every morning, so that you can maximize business hours to rectify the situation. And that's just good financial savviness. It'll make you hyper aware of how much money you have, how much money you're spending, how much money is going out. And you should particularly take an eye to recurring expenses and memberships, namely memberships that you don't use and recurring expenses that are unnecessary. And we all have a lot of these things. It's a man's responsibility to be a good financial steward. As you grow even greater in your wealth, you're going to have to get with this in a higher level. And that's going to involve other persons, not because you got like so much money it's impossible, but because it's just not worth your time. And what I mean by that is it's not worth your time to do your own bookkeeping. You hire somebody else to do your bookkeeping, and they should monitor the expenses of your businesses, because now you're not only looking at your personal expenses, you're also looking at your business income and balance sheets too. So you're going to need an accountant, and you're going to have to engage in what's called tax strategy, because now you're making enough money such that before was individuals. Oh, check this out. I should probably make a slide on this, on who's going to steal from you based on your income level. When you're broke, individuals steal from you. When you're well off, businesses steal from you. When you're wealthy, the government steals from you. Yes, understand me. Yes, there's levels, and there's those are the different characters that are going to try to steal from you. Yes, indeedy. Shout out to Akeem supporting the work. Appreciate it. Writes, Peace of the Saints tuition. Scott writes, you're a man of your word. Been waiting for this live for a while now. Thank you and blessings. Thank you for the support. Indeed. None of the above, writes tuition. Damn, I missed most of the live. But surmise you're a member, and so you will have access to this. Now, tax strategy is basically so all of your money doesn't disappear in taxes. And I want you to understand one of the major things that most people don't get. So, for example, I personally know a man who drives a Lamborghini and a Rolls Royce. He has both of them. Neither of them are in his name. They're both in the name of his business, their business expenses, which means a couple things. Here's the implication of that. Number one, he got to pay for the Lamborghini and the Rolls Royce with pre-tax dollars, which is to say, if he paid out the money to himself as an individual, say for every dollar, he'd only get to keep 60 cents out of the dollar. So if he gets paid $100,000, he'd effectively only capture $60,000 after taxes. He's been robbed by the government. Then he could use that for his expenses. But if he kept the money inside of the business, the $100,000 is $100,000, and he can purchase things using the full value of the dollar. And then he could take the Rolls Royce and the Lamborghini as expenses and losses in the business. And then he still gets to drive around in a Lamborghini, drive around in a Rolls Royce. It's essentially his because he owns the company. He has full use of it. And he now doesn't have the liability that an individual would have, which means that, say he has something like, a crazy wife, or he gets sued, or he gets divorced. He doesn't have a wife. He has an ex-wife. He gets divorced from his ex-wife, and they're trying to take some of his money for child support or for alimony. Well, he looks broke on paper, but he's still driving Lamborghinis and Rolls Royce because the business is paying for it. And so the business owns the Lamborghini and the Rolls Royce, so it can't be touched. And say that someone sues him personally, right? He gets sued as an individual. Those assets can't be seized because they're behind a corporate veil. They're protected by the corporation. He is sued, but the corporation is not sued. And so he gets to keep the Lamborghini and Rolls Royce. It can't be touched. So those are different ways that you can protect your assets. And if you own a company, whether it's an LLC or a corporation, you get to decide what you pay yourself, right? And so you could put your formal income at like $30,000, which is a poverty wage, $30,000 per year. So when you get hit for the child support, the judge is like, oh, this guy only makes $30,000 a year. So I'm just going to give you $500 a month in child support. And so you pay very low child support, even though you're effectively quite wealthy. It's just that you have your money in companies. So that's asset protection. That's income protection. And this is something that we should all design around, because we're in a world that's quite disadvantageous for men in particular. Shout out to Richard supporting the work. Truly appreciate that. Scott writes, question. Do you know if business LLCs still qualify for first-time home? No, they don't. No, they don't. Those first-time homebuyer programs are usually for owner-occupant residences, which is to say it's trying to help low-income or young people get their first home. They're government-backed programs. They often involve grants and or a certain type of loan, and these loans are for individuals, not for LLCs or for investment properties. Saint Fitness writes, All Saints meeting Monday, March 6th. Shout out. He writes, I will email you the link. Marcos will be hosting it. I have something going on. Okay, very good. So we're looking forward to All Saints meeting, and let's remember to maintain the proper structure. Since we have all of the executives identified in the regions, and by the way, Josiah is the executive in Florida. So all the executives can report out what's going on in their regions, share notes, and then carry on with the meeting. Okay, carrying on. So guard money from loss. You should be managing your financials very closely, be them personal or business. Also, you should be conscious of theft, fraud, and waste. Waste is your fault. Theft is, who's it's going to be an individual or a business or government stealing from you, depending on the level of your wealth. And fraud is basically something that happens when you're not paying close enough attention, which is to say you need to not only be watching the people on the outside, you also have to watch the people on the inside. Watch your women who have access to your funds. Watch your family members who have access to your funds. Watch your accountant. Watch your bookkeeper. I often will hire two people to do one job so that they watch each other. Huh? Yes, that's right. That's right. When I go through and do payroll to pay my employees, I got two assistants. I asked one assistant, hey, verify the hours of the other assistant. Hey, you verify the hours of the other assistant. If anyone ever screws it up, somebody's getting fired. And they're never going to overpay the other person, right? Works beautifully. And then I do the third verification. As a businessman, you never want what's called a single point of failure. You always want to double check, triple check, especially when money's involved. Here's an important one: savings. Savings are critical. If you're not wealthy, if you wouldn't consider yourself wealthy yet, you should save at minimum 10% of everything you get in income. I don't care what your expenses are. You must save 10%. It has been said, if you save your money, one day your money can save you. So always save 10%. Some people might say, Marquette, what if I have to spend 100% of my income to survive and I don't have an extra 10% to save? My response to that person is, well, if you make $1,000 a month and 10% of 1,000 is $100, you go ahead and save that $100. They're like, well, how am I going to survive if I can't pay my rent because I'm $100 short? Well, you figure out how to find that $100. Get it from a girl. Get it from your auntie. Drive Uber for 2 extra days. I don't care what you do. Don't you ever be without savings, because then you can't even save yourself. Joshua Wright, free services such as Credit Karma is also a great way to monitor your debts. And you should, because you might see something on there, meaning that somebody opened up a credit card in your name and you didn't know because you're not monitoring your credit. It's worth keeping an eye on. Very good recommendation. He writes, it helped me along my journey tremendously and keeps me in check with my credit score when my credit score drops. And Joshua is in the real estate game, and you have to have credit to get your mortgage loan. So he knows this is real experience from someone who's really doing it. So I highly recommend that you listen, because one of the things I mentioned is to get advice from the doers, and he's doing it. And as I said, I recommend highly against taking out loans. The only good loans really are mostly just real estate loans because there's a strong underlying asset there.